Anna Sørensen Trillingsgaard, close enough. She's a senior commercial advisor at Denmark's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, focusing on food, agriculture, and fisheries. She facilitates climate-smart agriculture by connecting Danish companies with US partners and promoting collaboration with California stakeholders to advance sustainable farming practices, innovative livestock solutions, and climate-resilient agricultural technologies. So, Anna, if you like, but you have about 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel today. Let me see. Click down. All right. So I'll zoom a little bit out from the conversation on methane to talk a little bit more broadly about the multi-stakeholder agreement that Denmark made last year. It's really an agreement that represents a holistic approach to transform the agricultural sector. And most importantly, it's an agreement made with farmers at table. So for the presentation I'm going to run through today, the slides will cover more than I actually have time to say, but I have left it on to illustrate the magnitude and the many different perspectives that adds into this agreement. But first, to provide a little bit of context of how Denmark ended up doing this. In 2019, Denmark put into law that by 2030, there should be a greenhouse gas emission reduction of 70%. Additionally, in 2021, you made also a specific sector goal for the agricultural sector. And also important to say is that this was made also to ensure that there's still a social balance when we're implementing these things. So Denmark has a very large agri-food sector. And in fact, 60% of our Danish land is covered by agriculture. So no matter where you look in Denmark, you see agriculture around you. And 2/3 of this is also used to produce livestock feed as of now. We also see, however, that the slice of the cake that agricultural emissions account for will only increase as we're working very hard to reduce emissions from other sectors as well. So agriculture is sort of like a big slice of the cake that we're working right now with this agreement to also make sure that it keeps up with the ambitions and with the 70% reduction target that we're aiming for. So I mentioned this agreement was a multi-stakeholder agreement. And this meant that besides the government, we also had the agricultural sector, civil society, municipalities, employer organizations, and trade unions represented at the negotiation table. And this is a quite unique approach that Denmark used to policymaking, and it is made on the idea that you need dialogue and collaboration of all the impacted stakeholders in such an agreement. And I think from a stakeholder perspective, it's probably also with the acknowledgement that you'd rather be at the negotiation table than be on the menu. So next slide is just briefly to showcase some of the different organizations that took part in the negotiations. And a few words about the key elements that they then came up with this agreement. There are a number of significant elements to it. The tax on greenhouse gas emissions from livestock, re-wetting of peatlands and afforestation. There's a green area fund to support new initiatives. There's a scheme for biochar. And then there's prioritizing land use changes to reduce nitrogen levels. So we're not just looking at methane when we're talking about this agreement, we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions from many different perspectives. But for the purpose of today's discussion, I'll dive a bit more into the taxation and to the technology initiatives. So a tax on livestock will be introduced in Denmark in 2030. This means that we're right now in an adaptation phase, so farmers know this is going to come, and right now they have the ability to start implementing solutions that can help them be ready for the tax when it comes in 2030. It will start be phased in 2030 with $18 per CO2 or per ton CO2 emitted, and then it will increase by 2035 to $45. This is already taking into account the base reduction that you've made also to ensure that you're not running farmers out of business by implementing this. And maybe most importantly to say, this tax is funneled back into agriculture through investments into research and into new technologies. So this is very important, that it's not just, you're not taxating farmers to take money away from them. You're doing this to create a mechanism that keeps investment happening in new technologies. So this is the one part that is very special about this agreement, and how we hope to keep making sure that we have the tools available, that we have the new technologies available and tested, so that our farmers can put this into scale as quickly as possible. Some of the technologies that we are also already using is methane-reducing feed additives. So earlier this year, a mandatory requirement was established in Denmark that dairy cattle should be fed at least 80 days a year with methane-reducing feed additives. On top of this, the agreement also allocated funds for a subsidy scheme, so the farmers can now apply for extra money if they are choosing to go beyond these 80 days using feed additives. So a way to use some of the tools we have at hand already, we're doing this. And then a few words on the implementation of the agreement. As you may have an idea of by now, this is a very complex agreement, and we've actually established a whole new ministry whose sole task is to be the anchoring partner to implement this agreement. This is done to make sure we could do it fast, efficiently, and with as much transparency as possible. It's also done to make sure that we can minimize the administrative costs and that we can ensure a focus on stabilizing land prices. And it is a complex agreement, but I think everyone agrees that the most important thing is farmers can keep farming in Denmark. So the agreement was made with the farmers, it was made with the farmers at the table, not against the farmers. And it's made to future-proof Danish farming ahead and to make it sustainable ahead. And before I wrap up, just a few words about how this agreement was made possible funding-wise and investment-wise. So we've drawn upon both public and private funding, and I think that also goes to show the collaborative model that this agreement was birthed through. So as an example, we have the Novo Nordisk Foundation, who are investing 1.3 billion euros over a 10-year period into different initiatives here. So I think this is a very important part also to showcase how it's not just the government who are part of this, it's many different stakeholders in Denmark who have a share in this agreement. So just by wrapping up, this was a very fast introduction, and I hope you kind of got an idea of what it is that we're working with right now in Denmark. I think I have no expectation that everyone now will go out and implement a tax on livestock, but I do hope that this can kind of serve as an inspiration, that this inclusive model of bringing relevant stakeholders to the table, and despite having very different points of views to start with, actually agree on something with this level of ambition can serve as inspiration. So now I am excited to hear from colleagues on the panel, and thank you so much for the time.